We turn next to the police brutality story that has focused national attention on Los Angeles. The videotaped police beating of motorist Rodney King has caused many in that city to examine how complaints of police violence are handled. Correspondent Jeff Kay of public station KCET reports on the aftermath of the beating.
3 Los Angeles police officers and a sergeant have entered not guilty pleas to assault charges arising from the videotaped beating of Rodney King. Now the Los Angeles County Grand Jury is investigating the 17 other officers from the Foothill Division who watched the beating, and the U.S. Justice Department is examining police brutality nationally.
We've all seen those shocking videotapes and seen transcripts of the incident in Los Angeles. And without getting into the specifics of the case, those terrible scenes stir us all to demand an end to gratuitous violence and brutality.
Following President Bush's condemnation of the King beating, as well as complaints by civil rights advocates, FBI agents began to interview police officers from the Foothill Division. But many officers have refused to cooperate in what is reported to be a widening investigation of officer misconduct. Police critics have long complained about police brutality and inadequate discipline. At least 2 of the officers charged in the King beating have been involved in previous incidents involving allegations of excessive force. Officer Ted Briseno was suspended for 66 days 3 years ago for kicking a handcuffed man. And Officer Lawrence Powell is facing at least 2 pending complaints, one that accuses him of breaking a suspect's elbow. The backgrounds of spectator officers are unknown because most records of alleged police misconduct are kept secret. But documents obtained by the NewsHour indicate that one of the officers who stood by, Robert Simpak, took part in a remarkably similar incident in the same neighborhood, another one involving officers from the Foothill Division.
Excessive force was used, uncalled for force. We feel that this was a violation of the individual's civil rights because to date we have not been given anything that he could be charged with.
In 1982, activists protested the police killing of 20-year-old James Mincy. Mincy had driven to his family home after being pursued by Officer Simpak, who had intended to cite Mincy for a broken windshield. Simpak twice sprayed mace into Mincy's face after Mincy left his car. His mother and stepfather recall how they and several neighbors looked on.
When he sprayed in his face, then quite naturally, he stooped over and was trying to get the mace out of his eyes. And then hollering to his mother, to bring him a towel so he could, wipe his face to get this mace out of his eyes.
It was like he was trying to get the stuff, I guess, out of his eyes, because it was officers on both sides, one holding him from one side and one holding him from the other side. So he didn't have the use of his hands at all.
According to police accounts of the incident, when other officers arrived on the scene, Mincy was hurled to the ground. Officer Simpak and others held him down, while a fellow officer applied a chokehold.
They hog-tied him, they had his feet tied, and he had the handcuffs on. When they put when they choked him, he was tied up like a hog. When I came out saying, "Oh my God, you don't have to kill him," he was tied up and couldn't even help himself.
And that's when she saw that, they put the choke on him and seen blood come out of his mouth, and she said they killed him.
Mincy died 2 weeks later without regaining consciousness.
Did what you've seen of the King beating kind of bring memories back to you, what happened to your son?
It gives me chills. It's just like opening up a wound. And it has gotten to the point that I can't bear to look at it anymore.
Officer Simpak, who has been assigned to a desk job since the King beating, did not return our phone calls. The city of Los Angeles has offered $900,000 to settle a lawsuit brought by Mincy's family, but no criminal charges were ever filed in the Mincy case. Police won't say what, if any, discipline was meted out to the officers, but lawyers who specialize in police misconduct cases say only a small percentage of citizen complaints result in police discipline, even if the city pays off a lawsuit on a police officer. In the last 10 years, the city of LA paid out more than $35 million in judgments and awards due to police misconduct.
Why does the policy of this city allow for some of those cases which have been adjudicated against us in large sums of money, those cases which are found not to be in policy, to what extent are we meting out serious discipline to send the correct message through the disciplinary system?
The King incident prompted some officials to call for an examination of the system to see whether the checks and balances are adequate. Lawyer Thomas Beck contends the prosecution of officers said to be involved in the King beating is an aberration. Beck says the Los Angeles District Attorney rarely prosecutes police officers for brutality.
We have physical evidence, videotaped evidence, even better than the King case because it's closer and it's in color, of a person being seriously choked out, being struck repeatedly with a baton, where the person is not offering any resistance.
In this 1988 incident, police from the city of Torrance, which is in Los Angeles County, were called to quell a fight at a party. 2 officers beat and choked a bystander. The city ended up paying out $105,000 to settle a lawsuit brought by the beating victim.
Notwithstanding the commission of 2 serious felonies in that case, the district attorney declined to file criminal charges against those officers on the grounds that there was insufficient evidence to secure a conviction. I find that absurd, and that is another illustration of what I mean by the DA being in bed with the police agencies. They are not independent, and the Torrance case is just a good example of it, but it occurs over and over in other times and places.
A spokesman for the Los Angeles County District Attorney said prosecutors were too busy to comment on these allegations, and he said they also didn't have time to compile statistics on the number of police officers they have prosecuted.
If you believe you have been a victim of any type of police abuse, you should contact the Police Misconduct Lawyer Referral Service at 213.
And then they made you lie face down on the ground?
Since the King incident, calls to the referral service have doubled. Counselors say they are now handling 50 complaints a day. The Independent Referral Service advises citizens on how to file complaints of police misconduct. The public often distrusts the police complaint system, according to Executive Director Carol Heppy.
We feel that it doesn't serve any purpose except the police department's purposes to cover their own back when there's violations on the streets, because you have the first part of the complaint the citizen's complaint goes to the division of where the officer is employed. It's investigated by fellow officers. These are usually friends of theirs investigating complaints against them.
And then the officer says that the suspect swung a foot at him. And when he did that, the officer fired another round and hit him in the other leg.
Los Angeles Police Chief Daryl Gates, who reviews most disciplinary cases, has been giving his officers stern warnings on the use of force.
When it says you will use only that force which is reasonable, which is necessary, that is the law. Anything you do to bring a cloud over that badge affects us all.
To the consternation of critics, the vast majority of complaints by citizens alleging excessive force are dismissed. Police officers believe that misconduct is dealt with severely.
In the places that I've worked, misconduct in any sense of the word is investigated fully. I think sometimes even as officers we think we're scrutinized too much, and some of our freedoms or our rights are taken from us, and we feel as though we don't have as many rights as citizens in the field.
Activists are not convinced. Many contend that police should not police themselves, that instead there should be a civilian review board or a special prosecutor. But the main emphasis of police critics has been to try to pressure Chief Gates to step down. Mayor Tom Bradley has come close to calling for his resignation.
And perhaps by removing yourself, that a healing process can take place. And maybe some friends who are impartial, who are respected by the chief, ought to be talking to him.
The American Civil Liberties Union has been busy gathering petitions in a campaign to oust Gates. They and other critics say that not only has the chief tolerated police brutality, he has allowed racism to infect his department. They point to the King case in which white officers beat an unarmed black man and relayed racist computer messages between police cars. Just before the incident, one message referred to a family dispute as right out of Gorillas in the Mist. A response mocking black English came back. Ha, 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 let me guess who be the parties. After the King beating, one officer wrote, "You just had a big-time use of force." The reply, "Oh well, I'm sure the lizard didn't deserve it, ha ha." Then, "Oops, I haven't beaten anyone this bad in a long time."
There has to be a tremendous level of belief that there is not going to be any repercussions from this, for there to be classically blatant racist remarks going back and forth, jokes about the savage beating of Mr. King. That, I think, speaks to there being an absence of moral leadership at the top.
Through all of this, Gates has vowed to stay in office.
And tell me, how can I do anything else to stay? With this kind of support,
LA police officers have rallied to the defense of Chief Gates, but many feel that charges of excessive force and racism have eroded community goodwill towards the police department.
We're all real frustrated. You drive around and you feel like, even though you weren't there, you might as well have been there because you're treated like you were there. I don't care what anyone says. We are not all out here on a daily basis mistreating people and not giving them the respect that they deserve. Would you like to stop the tape room and break up a fight? What's the problem out here, you guys? Where are the two guys that are fighting? They need us out here. We need to be here for them. But I think what I know in my heart that you want to see come back is that belief, the fact that they believe in us. Come here, talk to me. Will you talk to me? What's going on out here?
But building community confidence in the police department may be a tall order as federal and local investigations continue. Yesterday, Chief Gates announced a 10-point plan to restore confidence in the Los Angeles Police Department.
There's unanimous consensus that there must be a thorough and diligent search for any of the underlying reasons why those officers engaged in such lawlessness. We must look for any and all conditions that may have contributed to the development of attitudes and patterns of behavior that could have led to this kind of gross misconduct.
The program includes a panel to review police training procedures, a hotline for citizens to report complaints of excessive force, and improved monitoring of police operations. But police critics immediately denounced the Gates program as too little, too late.
We close tonight with some words from former President Ronald Reagan and former First Lady Nancy Reagan. 10 years ago this week, Mr. Reagan, his press secretary James Brady, and Secret Service agent Tim McCarthy were rushed to the George Washington University